Tenamwari. Be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe, Kudzai, Mudzimu Mukuru, giving praises unto our great ancestors, because our ancestors are worthy to be praised. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Tenamwari. Thus said Ra, the Lord of all, Lord of the utmost limits, after he had come into being. I am the one who came into being as Keper, he who comes into being and brings into being. When I came into being, being itself came into being. All beings came into being after I came into being. Yeah. But as we concluded at our Shemitah, this is not really how Ra would talk. So let's get more Ra-like. Let's get more Ra-like in our diction. So say Ra, Lada Opso, Dongsa and Rongso. Alright. When him come be, me are the one where come be, Keper. Alright. Him where come be and bring come be. Yeah. When me come be, Phoebe come be. Alright. All when come be from me when I come be. That's Ra speaking in more proper parlance, brothers and sisters. Yes. Yeah. I saw Ra talk. You know see? And yeah. So what we need to understand, yeah, from this declaration of Ra, the first one that we need to understand is what Keper means. Yeah. And as we went into it in a bit more detail in our Shemitah, Keper is the principle as conceptualized by our ancient Kemetu ancestors of regeneration, evolution, redevelopment, renaissance, and all of these things, brothers and sisters. As our elder Teofala Benga explains, Keper is the principle of all possibilities that come into being when creation comes into being. Is everybody with me? Yeah. Keper is a creative principle, yes, that encapsulates the variety of creative possibilities. And it is through our agency of being. In other words, in this particular example, the consciousness of Ra knowing himself as Ra, that allows Ra to become an agent of creation, that allows Ra to specify what comes into being through the power of the word, through a knowledge of himself as Ra. Is everybody with me? Are you sure? I need you to keep that in mind for the remainder of the message, because what we are emphasizing with the title, Omowale, waging the cultural revolution, is the fact that culture is in fact a paradigm for creative possibilities. Yeah. That it is culture that encapsulates the creative possibilities of a people, and through which they bring their specific creation into being. Is everybody with me, brothers and sisters? All right? So let's bear that in mind. Always like to emphasize the fact that Omowale Malcolm X was a father. Me say he was a father, yeah, and a family man. Yeah. And so we just throw this image in here so you can see him doing the work beside his queen and their daughter, brothers and sisters. Not an image that we're used to seeing of Omowale Malcolm X, but we just need to remember that, yeah, because family is very much a part of the work. But within the context of the legacy of Omowale Malcolm X, we understand and appreciate that what he was trying to build, yes, within the latter years of his life, was an organization called the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Yeah. Yes, and there are many narratives of the history of Omowale Malcolm X that fail to give proper appreciation for the Organization of Afro-American Unity and what it was and what it was trying to become. And so our message today is going to be centered on the vision and the mission of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And you will see where we get the title for our message as a result. Everybody all right? Yeah. Good. Yeah. So we are reading now from the program, Aims and Objectives, some say the Charter of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. I want to hail two ancestors as we get into this, because this was not written by Omowale Malcolm X himself as an individual. Yes, there were many brothers and sisters who were involved, but two of the principal ones are, as already mentioned, his big sister, Ella Collins. Very, very important that you remember that. And also, many don't know that the actual draft, final draft, was actually penned by our great Baba historian, John Henrik Clark. Yeah? All right? He actually was the person who physically write up the thing. Yes? Okay. And so, I'm not, was he involved in the writing? Okay, Baba Yusuf Benjamin was also involved in the writing. Yeah? I know that Baba Yusuf Benjamin, in the process, I know that Baba Yusuf Benjamin was one of Omowale Malcolm X's advisors, yes, especially in terms of history. But Brother Leader is also informed us that he had a hand also in writing the Charter of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Yeah, and so the Charter begins with the establishment of the organization. Yes, and why the organization is being established. And under the subheading of establishment, it says, remember now, this is the very beginning of the thing. Yes, this is the defining statement that says, yeah, we're there. Yes, are you following me? Right? This is who we are. We're there now. It says establishment. Upon this establishment, the Afro-American people will launch a what? Cultural revolution. Hold on there. This is the very beginning, you know. The first sentence of the establishment says, upon this establishment, the Afro-American people will launch a cultural revolution. Suggests that they understood that culture was central to the thing. Fundamental. Yeah. Not periphery, but central. I can deal with some culture. Yeah. Kultcha. That's the one. Culture. That we are dealing with today. For what purpose? Which will provide the means for restoring our identity, that we might rejoin our brothers and sisters on the African continent. Listen carefully now. Culturally. Yeah? We're in one paragraph, and I would have said culture twice already. Now you might not be aware of this when you see and read most lessons on the legacy of Omowale Malcolm X. Alright? Culturally, psychologically, economically, and share with them the sweet fruits of freedom from oppression and independence of racist governments. Yeah? So the liberation fight, as the OAAU envisioned it, required a cultural, psychological, economic reconnection with our brothers and sisters on the African continent. Yes, fundamental things. Yeah? Okay, so let's go forward, brothers and sisters, because we're going to now just deal with one of the first concerns when it comes to culture. And we're going to hear the words, I'm going to tell you something, the situation. We're going to do one of the first concerns when it comes to culture, and what culture is, what culture means, and what culture does for a people. Yeah? And it's the question that every liberation movement worth its salt has to answer if it is to be relevant to the people that it is designed to serve.
Most people, when we say Afro-American, they think only of the Negroes in the United States. But they don't realize that 2/3 of Brazil consists of people of African blood, which means they're also Afro-American because Brazil is in South America. And in all of these, many of these countries in South America and Central America, and even in Canada, they are heavily populated with people whose ancestors came from Africa. So when you total up the number of Afro-Americans, real Afro-Americans, in the Western Hemisphere, there are perhaps 100 million. And if these people ever unite among themselves, not only is it necessary for the Afro-Americans in the United States to be organized, but it's also necessary for the Afro-Americans in the Caribbean, or the Afro-Cubans, the Afro-Brazilians. It's necessary for all of them to be organized. And then once they are organized in each place, we have to organize among ourselves so that the Afro-American in the United States will be working in conjunction in a coordinated program with those who are in Cuba and those in Brazil and those in Venezuela and those throughout the Caribbean and Haiti and in the West Indian Islands. And in this way, we actually get strength. And it's not an accident that there's no organization existing in the Western Hemisphere that's designed toward that end. It would be a direct threat to imperialism as it really exists and to colonialism as it exists in the West. And one of the things that's going to help to bring this about is the independence of Africa. And one of the only reasons that we in the West have never organized, we have hated our image and our African image. And because Africa has been in the hands of people who have created an image of Africa that's negative and hateful. And it has been hateful to us. We haven't wanted to identify with it. But now that Africa is getting independent and in a position to create its own image, and it's a positive image, those of us in the West look at the African image and see how positive it is. We begin to identify with it. We become proud of Africa, and we become proud of our African blood, our African heritage. And this is what is beginning to make the Africans in the Western Hemisphere today develop more race pride. And as this race pride develops, then it has a tendency to make us want to unite together and work together. And your Western imperialists and colonialists consider this to be a grave threat. More threat than communism or Marxism or socialism or anything else. The Africanism is what they consider to be the real threat.
Can we hear Omowale Malcolm X, please? So what Omowale Malcolm X is affirming here is the identity of our people. All people that have a culture develop identity that is representative of that culture. Yes? But this affirms immediately the political use and the political worth of culture, in the sense of the fact that by defining Afro-American in the context of Africans across and throughout the Americas, in one fell swoop, Omowale Malcolm X has broadened the definition and freed Africans in America from the confines of being defined by the state. Yeah. That is the United States of America. Yeah. Is everybody with me? Yeah. So now our vision is no longer confined to Babylon system, so to speak, but broadened by a vision of African unity just based upon identity alone. Is everybody with me? Yeah. And then now the last sentence, he says that this is what is giving the white man problems. Your Western imperialists problems. Yeah. Him say, once the African recognize that he's African, and that African sensibility has a tendency to want to make us unite together and work together, this is considered to be a threat by your Western imperialists. Him say more a threat than communism or Marxism or any other kind of ism. Him say Afrikanism is what they consider to be the real threat.
That's right. Work some.
You never hear what the man say. Mr. The man say Afrikanism is what they consider to be the real threat. All right. So what is he talking about? What am I talking about? This is actually filmed about a month before Omowale Malcolm X is assassinated. January 1965, I believe. No, sorry. December or January December 1964 to January 1965, in and around that period of time. Yeah, so he returned from Mama Africa in November of 1964. Yes? Some or all of the students that are sitting around him, interviewing him, are from the Congo. It's partly the reason why you're seeing Papa Patrice Lumumba on the wall behind. But remember that this is the time of what the West calls the Cold War. After mass European War II, misnomered World War II, when they got to war with one another, dragged the rest of the world into the war and call it a world war. Yes? And after the conclusion of mass European War II, even though Russia was sided with the West against the Nazis them, in fact Russia took the most casualties, millions of Russians dead. Yes, fighting Hitler and Nazi Germany in a mass European War II. Yeah? Of all nations, Russia took the most casualties. But Russia committed a crime. And its crime was it adopted communism as its political and economic ideology. Yeah. And America and the rest of the Western world couldn't back that. So they got to war with Russia, but not militarily. They say it's a Cold War. Just to make sure the communism don't spread. That's all them depend. Yeah? And so whilst America was trying to expand its influence to stop the spread of communism, Russia was trying to expand its influence to spread communism. Yeah. And both of them were trying to exert their influence on African people in general. Battlegrounds were the African continent. Battlegrounds were Africans in America. Trying to buy the allegiance of Africans around the world to support one or the other in the midst of the Cold War. The most forward-thinking Africans say, no, you know what, we're not aligned with UNO, you know, we're not aligned with either UNO, you know. What we're going to do, we're non-aligned. Yeah, we have the non-aligned movement, the non-aligned boogies. Yeah, most of the forward-thinking, and some of those Africans were in fact communists or socialists in their inclination. Some of them were more capitalist in their inclination. But them decided to them, no, align with Russia and America in this Cold War business. But what Omowale Malcolm X is saying is that we don't even need to align with either of these ideologically. That when we depend on we own things, yeah? When we call Africanism, when we depend on that, that represents more of a threat to Western imperialism, in other words, Western capitalist imperialism, than communism and Marxism. That's the context for the statement that he's making. Is everybody with me? Yeah? So this is a statement of philosophical and ideological independence. Let's go forward. Just to emphasize the point, going back to the OAAU program, general terminologies, this is near the end now. We accept, after going through an explanation of terminologies that have been used to define African people and why they're inadequate and or derogatory, he says, we accept the use of Afro-American, African and black man in reference to persons of African heritage. To every other part of mankind goes this measure of just respect. We do not desire more, nor shall we accept less. What he's saying is that every people have the right to self-definition and self-determination. All right, let's go forward. So we read this at Shamila, and some of the things that we're going to go through today are going to be repeats, yeah, but repetition is very important. All right, so let's go through this again, yeah. So this is speaking now in June of 1964 at one of the founding rallies of the OAAU, the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And he says, when I was in Ghana, I was speaking with, I think his name is Nana Nketsia. I think he's the Minister of Culture, or he's head of the Culture, the Culture Institute. What is Nana Nketsia?
The head of the Cultural Institute.
The what institute?
Culture.
Wait, name again?
Culture.
So I was more culture we are dealing with. That's culture. All about the place, that's culture we are dealing with. The culture. Yeah, it's spelled wrong. But you know what I mean? We have to break the shackles of oh, sorry. So culture should be spelled Kulcha. All right? Culture. All right. So he's thinking the Minister of Culture, or he's head of the Culture Institute. I went to his house. He had a nice, beautiful place. I started to say he had a sharp pad. Yeah? The colloquial linguistics, all right? He had a fine place in Accra. He had gone to Oxford, the bastion of Western education. He got to Oxford, most elite class of education in the world. Man said, he go to Oxford. And him leave from Oxford, and when he leave from Oxford, him say this. Him say, and one of the things that he said, this is not in Ketsia now, that impressed me to no end. He said that as an African, his concept of freedom is a situation or condition in which he, as an African, feels completely free to give vent to his own likes, dislikes, and thereby develop his own African personality, not a condition in which he is copying some European culture pattern or some European cultural standard, i.e. capitalism, Marxism, etc., etc., etc. But an atmosphere of complete freedom where he has the right, the leeway to bring out of himself all that dominant, hidden talent that has been there for so long. Yeah? This was the foundation of our message for Shemira, Omowale, and the vision of freedom. Nana Nketsa is outlining the vision of freedom. In the atmosphere, brothers and sisters, you'll be surprised what will come out of the bosom of this black man. I've seen it happen. I've seen black musicians when they be jamming at a jam session with white musicians. A lot of difference. The black musicians, he picks up his horn and starts blowing some sounds that he never thought of before. He improvises. He creates. It comes from within. It's his soul. It's that soul music. It's the only area of on the American scene where the black man has been free to create. And he has mastered it. He has shown that he can come up with something that nobody ever thought of on his horn. Well, likewise, he can do the same thing if given intellectual independence. He can come up with a new philosophy. He can come up with a philosophy that nobody has heard of yet. He can invent a society, a social system, an economic system, a political system that is different from anything that exists or has ever existed anywhere on this earth. He will improvise. He will bring it from within himself. And that is what you and I want. Him say he will bring it from within himself. Like Ra. Yeah. When me be, me bring come be. Yeah. That's what he's saying. Yes? Mm-hmm. So he has emphasized now, again, culture as a creative incubator for a people. Yeah. A context within which a people creates. Is everybody with me? Yeah. I feel like we need to define culture a little piece more. Yeah, the thing named Omowale waging the culture revolution. All right. Yeah, we can go into some more culture. Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. You're not bored with all the culture. You're not bored. Yeah. All right. Cool. Let's go in there. Let's go in there. Yeah. So we're gonna define this thing called culture. I know. I apologize. You know. Let's let it go. All right. Okay. This is the Al-Kebulan definition now. When we use growing up as children, is what we were taught. Culture is. Culture is the collective personality of a people manifested in their natural and complete way of life. Culture is the collective personality of a people manifested in their natural and complete way of life. The two terminologies that I want you to keep in your mind for the sake of this presentation is collective personality and way of life. There are other terminologies that are important, but for the sake of now, please emphasize the terms collective personality and way of life. Yes? In other words, brothers and sisters, just like your individual personality allows us to identify who you are, a people's collective personality allows us to identify a people as a group. Sometimes, someone will know, if I don't hear you say something, but I know your personality, and somebody says something, this or that, we can know who say it if we know your personality. Are you following me? Yeah? Like the other day, when South Africa did take Israel to the ICJ, the International Criminal Court, I watched the proceedings, and the American head judge, was reading the findings. And she said, well, she was given the names of the judges who voted for and against and in between. I hear one name, I say, hold on there, that name sound like an African name. I never know who, I've never heard his name before, but there was reading in the name, we know that's an African. You following me? Yeah? And when I went and researched, I realized the sister was from Uganda. She voted the wrong way, but that's how it go. Yeah? You know what I'm saying? Alright, that's just the way it goes, yeah? But the point is that our names have a particular personality. That whether we know the name or not, we can identify its source. That's right. You following me? Yeah. Let's go look a piece further. Wade Nobles, but this is Mama Marimba Ani in the book Yorugu. Wade Nobles defines culture as a process which gives people a general design for living and patterns for interpreting their reality. Its aspects, he says, are ideology, ethos, and worldview. Its factors are ontology, cosmology, and axiology. Its manifestations consist of behavior, values, and attitudes. Yeah? Plenty big word. Yeah? In that definition there. So let's break down some of the big word them. Alright? Ontology, cosmology, and axiology. Ontology, the branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being. Yes? Looking at the nature of the self. Who me is. Yeah? Or who me be. As the case may be. Yeah? Cosmology, the science of the origin and development of the universe. Our understanding of the nature of the universe. Yeah? The cosmos. Alright? And then axiology, the study of nature, of the nature of value and valuation, and the kinds of things that are valuable. In other words, within the context of culture, these are the essential values of the culture, the principles of the culture. That which the culture values, puts a premium on. That which the culture holds sacred. Yeah, that's right. Yeah? And so through our ontology, our cosmology, and our axiology, we look at basically the essential building blocks of what a culture is. Understanding our nature of being, understanding the nature of the universe and our place in it, and from the combination of the two, we derive our primary values. Is everybody with me? Mama Marimba goes on. What does culture do for us? Culture acts as to unify and to order experience, so that its members perceive organization, consistency, and system. In this respect, it provides a worldview that offers up orienting conceptions of reality. Is everybody with me? Yeah? It gives people group identification, as it builds on shared historical experience, creating a sense of collective cultural identity. It tells its members what to do. Like we there know, why are we here? Because Omowale Malcolm X was assassinated on the 21st of February 1965. And so therefore, we develop an observance to commemorate that fact. Culture. Omowale Malcolm X sacrificed for us. Therefore, we must honor him. It tells us what to do. Alright? Culture represents values which they themselves have created together out of shared experience. Yeah? As a systematic set of ideas and a single coherent statement. I don't have time to go over everything, but I hope everybody's following the thing so far. Yeah. Yes? Culture provides the basis for commitment, priority, and choice, thereby imparting direction to group development and behavior. Indeed, it acts to limit the parameters of change and to pattern the behavior of its members. In this way, culture helps to initiate and authorize its own creation. Again, it be and it bring come be. It recreates itself consistently. Yes? But it also evolves itself. As in, culture evolves. It's not a stagnant thing. And if a culture remains stagnant, it will in fact die. It provides for the creation of shared symbols and meanings. It is therefore the primary what? Creative force of collective what? Consciousness. And it is that which makes it possible to construct a national consciousness. Finally, for all of the above reasons, it impacts on the definition of group interest and is potentially political. And although I tend to revise Mama Marimba's use of the word potential and say always, culture is always political. Yeah, and I'm sure as I revise Mama Marimba's words most humbly with the utmost humility, I'm sure she will agree, yes, with the revision. All right? Ten don't worry. I don't really have time for going to Amilcar Cabral today. However, I will say Baba Amilcar Cabral has a speech, which is turned into an essay called National Liberation and Culture. Yes, which he goes into culture as a revolutionary tool. And in fact suggests that culture is in fact the primary domain of oppression and liberation. That oppression is designed to kill the cultural life of a people. And what he says this, whatever the material circumstances, if a people maintain certain elements of their culture, revolution can spring up anytime. Are you following me? Yeah. But he also says that culture is not necessarily revolutionary. So that we don't get complacent with ourselves. Because some of us believe that liberation requires little more effort than to go in one silo somewhere, pour some libation and beat to Naya Bingi drum. And through that act alone, we have liberated ourselves. Yeah? That if we meditate and levitate and eat ital stew, that's all we need to do. And what he's actually saying is that if a culture of a people who have and are facing an oppressive system does not organize itself to confront the culture of the oppressor, that culture is counter-revolutionary and will in fact die. So, hoping that I've done justice to a summary of Baba Amilcar Cabral, the ancestor is deep, The ancestor is deep. I'm being serious. I'm telling you, read National Liberation and Culture. Yes? I'm recommending it. All right? Let us define revolution. We're not going to spend too much time on defining revolution. Very simply, dictionary definition. A forcible overthrow of a government or social order in favor of a new system. The forcible overthrow of a government or social system in favor of a new system. When we say cultural revolution, therefore, we are emphasizing with this idea of forcible the fact that we are a people that has existed within the context of an oppressive system. Yes. An oppressive system that dominates through the suppression and destruction of our culture. We have to therefore take it as read and understand that the oppressor is not going to simply allow us to flourish in African cultural personality, that our desire to do so puts us in a position of confrontation with the enemy. Therefore, we have to forcibly overthrow the enemy. Firstly, within our own consciousness. And secondly, within our material environment. That's a cultural revolution. But the term cultural revolution also presupposes the idea that the paradigm within which the revolution is fought comes from the culture of the people who are waging the revolution. On the era, me say, the term cultural revolution presupposes the idea that the paradigm within which the revolution is fought comes from the culture of the people who are fighting the revolution and is designed to reassert the functionality of said culture in the lives of the people.
Yeah. Come on.
Is everybody with me? Yeah. And so we have to delve into this in terms of our current day reality. Because when we speak of now African culture, one of the first things they're going to hear is, what is African culture? There's no such thing as African culture. Africans are very diverse. It's impossible to identify a singular African culture because Africans are not monolithic. African is not a monolith, as though culture denotes monolith in general. Every culture has variation and diversity. Is that what with me? But there's a reason for why they put out this propaganda. Why? Mama Marimba teaches us in the book, Let the Circle Be Unbroken. It says, our oppressors have emphasized our loss of language. Now, we know we have to talk English to communicate, right? Why? Because we are colonized by the English. Yes, loss of language. Yes, dress, living patterns, and other tangible and surface aspects of culture, just as they do in discussions of African culture on the continent. They emphasize difference. Yes? So don't worry. All right? They emphasize differences in language and custom, even physique, from one society to another. They do this with good reason. Until we learn, I've missed something skipped here, but anyway, let's continue. Until we learn that it serves our objectives, what she's saying is that it serves their interest. The emphasis on the differences among African people and the ability to make those differences antagonistic serve their interest of imperialism and domination over African people. She says, until we learn that it serves our objectives to emphasize the similarities, the ties, the unifying principles, the common threads and themes that bind and identify us all as African, we will continue to be politically and ideologically confused. Notice, she never said, until we find the unifying principles that make us a monolith. No, the unifying principles, the common threads. That there are common threads. That's all we need, common threads and themes that bind us. Yes? Together. Tell them worry. And in doing so, we not have to fabricate nothing. We not have to invent no fantasy. It did it in our culture. And all we have to do is study it. Get to know it. Because all those who have studied it have come to the same conclusion. We won't be going into the details, but just to emphasize the conclusion. Another day, we'll go into the details. Today, Sheikh Anthony Diop teaches in the book Black Africa, listen down, the economic and cultural basis for a federated state. Very good book. A consideration of the pre-colonial African family, that of the state, the accompanying philosophical and moral concept, and the like, reveals a consistent cultural unity, resulting from similar adaptations to the same material and physical conditions of life. Can you sit down, please? Thank you very much. All right. Turn down, worry. Yes? Reveals what? A consistent cultural unity. Let's go somewhere else. It's taken from a book called Conflict of the Minds by an elder by the name of Jordan Ngabane. He is from Southern Africa, yeah, particularly what is today called South Africa. All right? And he says, when I traveled to West Africa in 1958 and the United States in 1969, I discovered that the West Africans saw reality from the perspectives I had. In my ignorance regarded as peculiar to the Bantu, i.e. the Zulu and the Xhosa in Southern Africa. In West Africa and find we upon some similar vibration. We work on the same frequency. Yes? He said, particularly Bantu teaching in my part of the continent. I was pleasantly surprised to discover that the common factor in Southern and Western African experiences was our evaluation of the person, which gave identical rhythms to our different cultural experiences. Let me read that again. I was pleasantly surprised to discover that the common factor in Southern and Western African experiences was our evaluation of the person, the human being. Yes? Which gave identical rhythms to our different cultural experiences. And he goes on to how he found the same the more he studied the culture of our ancient Nile Valley ancestors. All right? Why is this important? Yeah? Why is this important? We're seeing here that the culture is like the glue that binds the people together. All right? And I don't know if anybody saw this particular interview. Yeah? But it's Tucker Carlson interviewing, who's a journalist, interviewing President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. All right? And me watch this thing, it's about 2 hours and something minutes long. And there was a couple of interesting points, but this is a particular point that I want to emphasize with this particular message.
Well, of course, it did come true, and you've mentioned this many times. I think it's a fair point, and many in America thought that relations between Russia and the United States would be fine with the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, that the opposite happened. But you've never explained why you think that happened, except to say that the West fears a strong Russia, but we have a strong China the West does not seem very afraid of. What about Russia, do you think, convinced policymakers they had to take it down?
Запад боится сильного Китая больше, чем сильной России.
The West is afraid of strong China more than it fears a strong Russia, because Russia has 150 million people and China has 1.5 billion population, and its economy is growing by leaps and bounds, or 5% a year. It used to be even more. But that's enough for China. As Bismarck once put it, potentials are the most important. China's potential is enormous. It is the biggest economy in the world today in terms of purchasing power parity and the size of the economy. It has already overtaken the United States quite a long time ago, and it is growing at a rapid clip.
Don't worry. There's a lot that I could highlight here. I'm not going to highlight everything. However, we should all be aware that, generally speaking, it's accepted that China will become the world's largest economy by the end of this decade, yeah, and overtaking America in doing so. But Tucker Carlson asked him the question, because throughout the interview, yeah, this is a very interesting interview, by the way, just from a theatrical point of view. I'm a fan of political theatre, yeah, and at this point, Carlson asked Putin a question. The question he asked him is, why would America fear a strong Russia? As there's a strong China in the world, and America doesn't fear a strong China. And Putin said, well, no, that's not the case. What are you talking about? Him say, America fears a strong China more than it fears a strong Russia. What was the first reason that he gave? Russia has 150 million people. China has 1.5 billion population. That's the first reason that he gave, and he goes on to give others in terms of economy and so on and so forth. Now, a large population contributes to the fact that China is an economic superpower. It also presents economic challenges. But one of the assets of having a large population is that you are capable, because you have more labor at your disposal, of outproducing your competitors. Yeah, pardon? And building a bigger army, militarily speaking. More manpower and womanpower. Yes? Okay. Why is this important for us as African people? China also had a cultural revolution. Did it not? Now there's all kinds of debates about the extent to which the cultural revolution was a positive or a negative within the context of the Chinese Revolution. Yeah? All kinds of debates. Some debates say, well, it was good on the one hand, but economically it still left them poor. Yeah? Some say in both instances it was negative because it allowed Mao to kill off all of our people. Yeah? There's for and against in all of these things. But you know what I learned recently? Some of those who were challenging Mao's cultural revolution started a thing called the Chinese Cultural Renaissance Movement. So them challenge Mao with more Chinese culture. Yeah? However, few people would deny the idea that whatever the benefits, the pros and cons of the Cultural Revolution, one of the things that it did do was that when the Chinese came out of the Cultural Revolution, they had a strong sense of cultural cohesion in what it meant to be Chinese. That even if you believe that culture's economic ascendancy did not begin until after the Cultural Revolution, it was the social cohesion to a significant degree that was developed during the Cultural Revolution and before that allowed them to be organized enough to economically advance, leap and bound to the point whereby they're challenging America today. Tell them, worry. Is everybody with me? Yeah. African people on the planet today are nearly 2 billion in number.
Come on.
Yes? Simple as I take it, China wasn't always people that recognize themselves as one China people. If you watch a lot of Kung Fu movies, which I do, yeah, I'm a fan of the Kung Fu movie, yeah, very, very important medium of cultural affirmation, the Kung Fu movie. Right? You can learn a lot from the Kung Fu movie, trust me. Yeah, one of the defining themes in Chinese Kung Fu movies is the idea of one China. And half of the films are telling the story, the history of how they must assert them one Chininess. That's a technical terminology, Chininess. All right? You following me, brothers and sisters? Yeah. So now, when we look at culture as the glue that binds the people together, that creates the social cohesion for a people, Africanism only becomes that number one threat to the extent that African people manifest it in our social cohesion. Plenty more I have to say, but I don't have time. Yeah, what I wanted to get to was actual examples of how this thing runs. But I'm going to end on some more philosophical development. The day before yesterday was the birthday of Nana Amos Wilson, the 23rd of February, yeah? And he says, most often, in the book Blueprint for Black Power, he says, most often a group is formed based on the sharing among its members of a common history, set of values, fate, plight, or on their consciousness of a shared collective identity. Socioeconomic class, e.g., for example, socioeconomic class, political or social category or ethnicity. These shared factors form the basis for the construction of a group solidarity and the use of solidarity to generate and exercise social power. The achievement of group solidarity and organization results from the mobilization of previously disunited individuals in order to create or activate power they may already have possessed but could not employ or wield due to the absence of will and facilitating group ideology. He continues, power, particularly its effective exercise to achieve certain ends, does not flow solely from the ownership and control of property. You own your house. You own a business. Yeah, your own land. Does not flow, solely from the ownership and control of property as a thing or property as a right. This society in which we live, that is dominated by what is called neoliberal sensibilities, define property rights as the most central right. Yes? Are you following me? That's in what they call neoclassical economics. That property rights are the preeminent rights. But Baba Amos was saying that power doesn't necessarily solely flow from ownership of property or having the right to property. Effective working power, the essence of social power, requires the coordinated organization of power resources. It is not the mere possession of the power resources and of the power which flows from their possession, which enables some groups to dominate others, but it is more so the organization of power on the part of the dominant group, in contrast to the relative disorganization of the subordinate group, which may possess potentially more powerful human and or material resources than the dominant group. In other words, Africa is the richest continent on the face of the planet. In other words, there are more Africans on the planet than there are Europeans. Technically, we have more, but we are less organized, which ensures their control over the subordinate group. To paraphrase Beetham, who's a social scientist, the manner in which a group's internal social relations, i.e. power relations, are organized has obvious consequences for the power of the group and of society as a whole. Is that what you mean, brothers and sisters? Yeah? So elsewhere in the book, he draws from this framework from an economist called Joel Kotkin. Yes, he wrote a book called Tribes. Yeah, and he says in the book he's identifying the three factors that have contributed to nations and groups of people that are considered powerful in the world. Not all of those groups of people are confined to nation states. For example, yes, the Jewish community has a sense of nationhood that is not confined to a particular state. Is everybody with me? The same with the Chinese then. Go all about the world. Chinese. Chinatown. China. You following me? Yeah? That's the three factors that he identifies. The first one is a strong identity. The second is a global network. Are you hearing me? Yeah. Global network. And the third is technical knowledge, a passion for the acquisition of technical knowledge, brothers and sisters. The challenge here for us, as I close, is that our cultural revolution is not simply about the learning and practicing of African culture. It's not simply about knowing what our ancestors did and doing it today. As I said, culture is a creative paradigm. That means when we are operating in our culture revolutionarily, we create. What did I hear me say? Me say we create. That means we build upon what our ancestors built. That means we have to build new paradigms, new structures to face the challenges of today based upon the primary principles and values that were left for us by our ancestors. Waging the cultural revolution means that we don't just get lost in the beauty of being able to express ourselves in African dance and African language and African food and African ritual and African garms. My garms look good, don't it? Yeah, nice. Well, beautiful, right? Yeah? But it's not enough. You don't think it good. Let's move on to the word. Indeed. All right? But it's not enough. As Omowale Malcolm X challenged us, the same way the context for it now. He used the example of music. When we are in our musical expression, we create new things. And then he challenges us that when we are operating from our cultural center, we can be just as creative intellectually. We can be just as creative in the development of political systems. We can be just as creative in the development of economic systems. We can be just as creative in the development of education systems. We can just be just as creative in the development of social systems. The challenge for us in the waging of a cultural revolution today, brothers and sisters, is to what extent can we revolutionize our culture to the extent that it can wage an all-encompassing 360 degrees revolution against our enemies, protect our interests, and evolve new systems and values of economics and politics to house and raise our people for generations to come. The most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey, said, we must build our institutions along the lines of our own culture and civilized idealisms to meet the desires and aims which are specific to us as a people. The only question is, will we meet that challenge in the 21st century?
Come on. Question.
Will we meet that challenge in the 21st century?
No, sir. No.
And liberate ourselves as a people, as Omowale Malcolm X has said, by any means necessary. I give thanks for your listening ears, brothers and sisters. Tendai Warrior.
Tenamari. Wasn't that powerful, brothers and sisters? Always as delivered by our brother Shakaran.